Withology is about the stories behind success. Join host Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications, as he interviews successful industry leaders to hear the fascinating stories about their personal journeys and the people who have helped them get to where they are today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Withology. I'm Brian Tierney, CEO of Brian Communications and chairman of Real Time Media. And today I am truly excited. I'm pumped about this conversation we're going to have with an extraordinary individual, Reverend Cortés. Reverend Cortés is the founder and president of something called Esperanza, which is based on the word hope. And he's one of the nation's leading Latino Christian faith-based organizations that he started from scratch. Unwavering dedication to social justice, economic development, empowerment, and serves over 25,000 families every year with more than 750 employees, what they do in terms of housing and workforce development and education and healthcare access and so many different things. His story is really powerful, so I can't wait to get into it. Hello, Reverend Cortés. Great to see you.
Thank you, Brian. It's an honor to be here.
Great. Pretty cool. When I walk around and see what you've created and the people and the passion, it brings such a spark. As you get back in your car, you've got a smile on your face and a warmth inside. Let's start at the beginning, too. You're from New York originally. Talk a little bit about the early days, and you grew up in Spanish Harlem, and how did all this shape who you are today?
Yeah, Brian, I was born. There's not a lot of people left around that were born in 1957, but I was born in 1957.
I know one other guy. His name is Tierney. But anyway, put that aside for a second. Yeah.
And so I spent my first 9-10 years of life running the streets of Harlem in New York. And I got to talk a little bit about family and environment. So I grew up in a Hispanic household. So Spanish, everything was done in Spanish. And everything worked well. And then I had to go to school. And I always watched cartoons. And television was in English. So I had an English base, but Spanish was my primary language. I then start school and I bump into my first close encounter with people of a different kind. And it was a kids named Larry and Gilbert. And Larry was Italian and Gilbert was Irish. And my first day of school was intriguing because I'm like, who are these guys? And they are so different from the rest of my class. And it didn't go well at the end of school. We got into a little bit of a tussle. And I remember going home and my mom telling me, don't worry about it. This will change in time. So here we are, 50 some odd years later, and it still hasn't completely changed in time, but it has gotten better. Growing up, the faith of my mom was really important. And we would be called economically disadvantaged as a family. My two brothers and I lived with my dad and my mom, and we had a 1-bedroom apartment. Mom and dad slept in a sofa bed in the living room, and me and my two brothers, we had separate beds, bunk beds, and another bed, and we slept in that room. But I always saw that the men that were around me, my father and his friends, they believed in the American work ethic. And that work ethic is don't worry about what's happening today. Work hard so that tomorrow will be better. And if you work hard, you will make tomorrow better. So that you could call it the Christian ethic, the Protestant work ethic, the American work ethic. It was there and it was understood. And the big thing for my father and my mother was you have got to excel in school. It was like there was no dialogue about school. My father would say, school is your job. My father worked a job where he worked at the Larchmont Shore Club, where he would spend 4 days and then come home and then work a second job in a local grocery store, saved up while before I was in the 4th grade. By the time I was in the 4th grade, he had worked a second job for 3 years or 4 to save up $12,000, which he used to start his own grocery store. And so I saw the work ethic. I saw my dad work every day, 16-hour days in a grocery store. On a day where he took time off, it still was 13 hours. And he would only close the store for 5 days every January, go to Puerto Rico, visit family, come back, and go at it again. And I learned a lot about life working in that grocery store between 107 and 108th Street on Lexington Avenue. You know how you see Peanuts and Lucy, and she has that psychiatrist sign?
Yep.
Grocery store to the Latino community is similar to the barbershop or to Lucy's psychiatrist desk. Everybody comes in, they come in regularly. After a while, you get a feel for who they are. After a while, you know when they're having a bad day or a good day. And after a while, as time passes, they start sharing. Oh, I had a bad day, my kids, my father, my mom. And you learn a lot about what's going on in the neighborhood. You actually know more about what's going on in the neighborhood than most. There are parts of the neighborhood that are normative, like what's the number for the illegal numbers racket.
Mm-hmm.
So people will come by and say, the first number is 7. And people walk by and they ask you, what's the number? And you normally answer 7. So you become part of the everyday life of a community when you're in a grocery store. And you learn a lot about people. You learn who the hustlers are and who are the folks that are just trying hard to get through the day. And it was a great experience. So when you ask me the question, growing up in Spanish Harlem, it shaped my faith and worldview. The worldview was that if you work hard, you can make something happen. My dad did retire at the age of 53 just from working a grocery store. So his vision of hard work and how it would pay off came true. It's a tension today because someone might work as hard as my dad did, but they might not get the same payoff because of the economy. Nevertheless, the experience in Spanish Harlem was a great experience. You had different cultures. It was Manhattan. And even though Spanish Harlem, we lived on 3rd Avenue. 2nd Avenue was what we used to jokingly refer to as the DMZ zone. The Italians, West Side Story?
Yeah.
Well, there's some truth to that. 2nd Avenue East was Italian. 2nd Avenue West is Puerto Rican. And the schools were the demilitarized zones, which is where we would meet. And, you're at peace. So you learned about other cultures. You didn't learn about them in an academic way, but you learned about them because the food was different and you learned what you like. When they had parties and you can go, you would look at, wow, that music is so different than the music we listen to. So there were cross-cultural opportunities. We didn't call them cross-cultural. We do now, but there were opportunities to meet the other and to make the other a friend. And I think we miss a lot of that. As we become more homogeneous in neighborhoods, believe it or not, I think we miss learning of the other at the street level.
Yeah. My mom was Italian and my dad was Irish, and working class mom was a waitress. And my Italian mother used to say, if you're going to be lazy, Brian, you should put a millstone around your neck and throw yourself off a bridge. I wasn't sure what a millstone was, but I knew it didn't sound good.
Wasn't good.
It wasn't good. So I wasn't going to be lazy. And it is funny, too, because you talk about hitting the numbers. This is before legal lotteries. There were in certain neighborhoods. And that's when we moved from the Penzel apartments, apartment B2 in Upper Darby, to new home in Springfield is when mom hit the number. So it was.
Yeah, that's it. Right? Yeah, well, and you say that the big deal for us was when I was at 5th grade, we were able to qualify for affordable housing and we moved to the projects. So we moved from Spanish Harlem to Black Harlem in the 5th grade. So we moved from 109th Street and 3rd Avenue, where I lived, to 155th and 8th Avenue. And instead of going to the junior high school that was Hispanic, Italian, and Irish, I went to Frederick Douglass Junior High School, which was African Americans. About 3,000 kids. I was one of the 2 were not African American kids.
And how old were you? This was 14 or?
I was 9. I went to the 5th grade first. But in the 5th grade, it was a more mixed school. In the 7th grade, so I was 11 about 11 in September of that year, I go to Frederick Douglass Junior High School, and it's another world. And my dad had told me, it will not be hard for me to move to Black Harlem. It will be hard on you. And I didn't understand what he meant, but if I remember, it was 1967, the end of 67, the beginning of 68. And I would go to school, and in the beginning, kids would say to me, what are you doing here? And I looked like a little Italian or Jewish kid. And it was like, I would say, hey, I'm Puerto Rican. And the response ultimately was, you're not black, which the word black was used instead of African American. And I remember after you were in the community for about 9 to 11 months, I then became part and parcel of the community. And I was Louis. I became Louis. And it was like, he's Louis, a Puerto Rican guy. And you become part of that neighborhood and you begin learning an entirely new way of life. Different shoes, different pants, different shirts. So I moved from Pro Keds to Converse, from jeans to sharkskin pants, from a collared shirt to an alpaca sweater. And when I go to high school, DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, there was a group of Puerto Rican kids. And they see me coming up the stairs and they were like, what, you think you're black? Because I was dressed as an African American. I didn't realize I was necessarily dressed as an African American. And it was back to the pro Keds instead of the cons.
Yeah.
So I think you learn these things part of it is to survive these moments, right? You have to survive the moments when you're the outsider, but also how do you move from the outside to the inside? How do you learn to discern what you can and cannot do when you're an outsider? You learn that in New York, and you can learn that, in parts of North Philly or parts of Philadelphia. So to me, the issue of community and what the community does to you and for you are very important, because that's where you spend an inordinate amount of time when you're a young person, right? Once you start going to school, your relationship with your parents takes a secondary position, though it's never discussed that way. But your friends become more important, and the outside influence becomes more important. And how you deal between those two worlds, if your parents are what I would call from the old world, and your world around you with your friends and the community you have to be in are the present world. And how do you mix these two? Example I could give to you is a language example, because it's easier than the cultural one. If we're having a conversation in Spanish with my parents and I drop a plate, in English I say, I dropped the plate. I just did it. I just said it. In Spanish, you say, plato se cayó. The plate fell, right? It's the perspective of culture.
Yeah.
Spanish culture or Latin culture is based on a more fatalistic perspective of the world. So if you're going to the airport and the plane you're supposed to be on flies overhead because you are late, speaking in English, I get to say, el avión me dejó. The airplane left me. So it's a different perspective in life. One way is not better. One's more technological. The English language is a more technological language than the Spanish language or agrarian cultural languages. Agrarian cultural languages are based on the fact that you could till the soil all you want. If it doesn't rain, crops don't grow. And so you have to have a different understanding with the mysticisms of life, which are interpreted in different ways, right? So you'll see a Clint Eastwood movie. Remember the spaghetti westerns?
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching a spaghetti western, what do you see? You see a town full of Mexican men, and 5 bad gringos come, usually accompanied by 1 bad Mexican with the 5 bad gringos. And they take over a town of Mexicans. And it's perceived that the Mexican men there are weak and they just won't fight back until you hear that music, right? Da-da-da-da-da. And who is it? It's Clint Eastwood. 1 bad gringo with 2 guns. And he can take care of that community. That's just the stereotyping of an agrarian culture and a technological one. That understanding, we do not have. The majority culture, which is English, technological, does not understand that of African Americans, Latinos, and Asians. So when you're in school, if my mother's talking to me in Spanish at home, to this day, and she calls me Antonio, my middle name, Antonio, a certain way, I look to the floor. That's a sign of respect. In school, you're told to do just the opposite. How dare you look at the floor? Look at me at the eyes when I'm talking to you. That is the ultimate culture clash. And a child in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade cannot say, Madam Teacher or Mr. Teacher, Mr. Professor, I've been born and raised in an agrarian culture, and you are taking your technological culture and asking me to do something that's been ingrained in me. The more you scream at me, the more I got to look into the floor, right? So when you ask me about New York, all of that is part of New York and my experience.
Where are you in your life when you decide, you know what, I think I'm going to go to theological school? What's going on in your world, and how old were you when you
Yeah,
started?
I am now in high school in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and I had thought I was going to be a lawyer. I loved reading. My dad instilled that in me, my dad and my mom. There was kind of a rule in my household. I couldn't ask for toys, but I could ask for books. Any book I asked for, I'm to get. So after a while, you're like, I want this book and I want that book. And my father, before having the grocery store and after the Larchmont Shore Club, worked at a company called Marlboro Books, the Marlboro Book Company. And he would bring back a catalog and say, look through the catalog, pick five. So I picked five, and he forced me to read them, which I got wise to that and started picking smaller, easier books. But then I would have to read them. It's like, I brought you the book. You wanted the book. You're going to tell me what's in the book. And when I was in high school, I already loved to read. I had been working in the store, and I liked to help people. They would come to the store, and you're taking care of them. And if they told you about a problem, you try to get that taken care of. My dad wanted me to be the family lawyer, right? Because every first generation's got to have a lawyer and help that small business become this massive, American conglomerate company. So that was my dad's dream. I thought I wanted to be a social worker. I was going to church. My mom was Protestant at this point and making me go to a Protestant church. And one day I was introduced to a gentleman named Dr. Santiago Santo Fontanes, who was the head of all the churches in New York, Spanish Baptist churches. And, this guy had a PhD. Now, I didn't know what it was in,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, interesting. A Latino guy working in the church with a PhD. And so one day I got to visit with him. My pastor introduced me to him. He says, come to my office on a Saturday. And I remember it was 225 Park Avenue South. I'll never forget the address. It's the first time I go to that part of town, right, to see another Hispanic person. So when people tell you it doesn't make a difference, I will tell you, Brian, it does. When you go visit someone of your own culture, if you're Irish, they're Irish. If you're Italian, but in my case, Puerto Rican guy, young man in high school, 10th grade, is going to 225 Park Avenue South. I know enough to know that address and what that address means and where it is. And I go visit, but I'm going to go visit on Saturday morning, a guy with a PhD. So I'm like, okay. And he pulls out, we talked a little bit, and he pulls out a book, The Leaves of a Notebook of a Tame Cynic by Reinhold Niebuhr. And he says to me, listen, I don't have time to read through this book, but maybe you could do me a favor. Your pastor told me you're a bright guy. Can you read through this book and can we discuss it in the future? And I'm like, sure. He goes, good. Can you come next Saturday? So I remember I judged the book by its thickness. And I'm like, looks like 120 pages maybe. I think I could do it, right? So I did. And the book was about a pastor, Reinhold Niebuhr, a pastor in Detroit. But the book dealt with cynicism and hope, what's moral responsibility, the issues of faith and doubt, social justice, which I had never really heard of. Though I grew up in Spanish and Black Harlem, and I knew who Martin Luther King was. He was alive by 69. He already had passed, but I had lived through the Kennedy assassinations, seen him on television, the King assassination, but I had never discussed social justice in this way. That it was in the book. And then the fight of good and evil, human nature and good and evil. So I read this book and I was turned on to it, right? And I go meet with him and we discuss the book. And that's where all of a sudden, all my reading and my ideas were about God, study, inquiry, philosophy, ethics, social work, justice. Everything's at play. But that's when I was like, I could make this into a living if I go into the church. All of these items are part of the church. And one of the good things about being Protestant is I don't have to be celibate to go into the church. So I was like, this will work.
That's what held me back. Catholic. That's what held me back. That's right.
I was like, this will work. I was really turned on. And the faith dialogue, but at the level I'm talking about, it wasn't Bible dialogue. We weren't talking about Samson. We were talking about social justice. We weren't talking about, Jesus on the cross. We were talking about what is a moral man versus an immoral man? What is good versus evil? That unlocked in me a desire to become a PhD. I was like, this is the ultimate. And I could actually make a living doing this, which I thought was the ultimate hustle, right? I could get paid to study and read. So I think that was it, right? I think at that point, I start going into the ministry and what does that mean? And I go through the process. You got to go to college. You got to go to seminary. Dr. Fontanes helped me. He told me one of the best seminaries globally happens to be in New York, which is Union Theological Seminary.
Famous. Yeah.
Which is the seminary where Reinhold Niebuhr taught. So he was like, if you want to go and be a leader for our community, you need to go there. They will train you to lead our community versus going to a seminary that's going to indoctrinate you.
And what year is this when you're thinking about these sort of things?
Maybe 73, 74. I graduated from high school at 75.
So it's like a sophomore, junior in high school.
At sophomore, junior. And by junior, I had made the decision. And so I start the process to go to college. I did my 4-year degree at City College of New York in sociology, honor student, finished it in 3 years. I would work full time. Brian, reading for me is just fun, right? So when I went to college, reading was fun. I was a sociology major because I thought it made the most sense, sociology or social work. But because I was having questions about, my questions were more esoteric and philosophical and theological, I moved away from social work to sociology because sociology examines the state of the human condition in a particular point. And so to me, it was like, that's what's got to inform me. Sociology will inform me to make theological decisions. So I went there, I got out, and I immediately went to Union. I graduated from Union at the age of 22 with my master's degree. So it was like, that was it. And when I got out of Union Seminary, while at Union, I had an opportunity to go to Detroit for a Theology in the Americas conference. And while I was at that conference, I got there late because students went on a bus. Everybody else flies in, we're on a bus gets delayed. I get there late, and there was this little man speaking. And I'll never forget, he said some things that I didn't agree with. And the year before, I do need to say, I had lived in Cuernavaca, Mexico, with the Bishop of Cuernavaca, who had founder of Christians for Socialism. And they had taken the church land and divided it up and gave people the seed and the water and the land. And then the deal was, you grow the corn, mostly corn. There were other, but it was mostly corn. You grow the corn, and then you split it 50-50. And I saw people who were given seed and water and land try to steal corn from widows and orphans. And I'm from New York, so you ain't stealing from the church. So I'm getting ready to have fist fights in my clergy collar they would have killed me. Those men were hard. But anyway, I'm over there saying, no, half this corn belongs to the church. And that includes the corn that you're hiding in the back of the house. So I go from that to Detroit the following year for Theology in Americas. There's a short man speaking. And I got up and I told him it was romanticism. This liberation theology is romanticism because of the state of man is still fallen. And so man will always cheat no matter what. And people turned around and looked at me, and I knew that I was like, uh-oh, I think I overstepped my boundaries, because you could see everybody turned around like, it was that, who the hell are you?
You're probably thinking, this is a heavy thinker, though. This guy's got some deep thoughts.
No, it was just the opposite. I could tell what it was. It was like, who the hell's this kid talking to this man this way? And I'll always be grateful to him, because he said, you know what? You're right. You know what? You're right. Well, that man was Gustavo Gutierrez, known as the father of liberation theology.
Wow.
I had no clue who he was. I wouldn't have dared. A smarter guy would ask the person next to him, if you get there late, who's speaking, right? Because I didn't even get a program. I got there so late. I just ran in. But he said that. I responded the way I did. And then it ended up that they made a decision. Dr. Orlando Costas, a Puerto Rican theologian from Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, was in attendance of that meeting. And he came up to me at the end and he said, he asked me my name. And he asked me where I'm like, I'm a senior this year at Union Theological Seminary. And he said, I'm Dr. Orlando Costas. I had actually read his book. So I was like, oh, cool. And he says, I'm looking for an assistant. I think you should come to Philadelphia. 1981, I came here to head up the Hispanic Studies program of Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary across from St. Charles Seminary on Lancaster and City Line Avenues to be his assistant and run the Hispanic Studies program. That's how I came to Philly, man.
That's amazing. You find these moments that if you had gone this road versus that, if you hadn't shown up in that, your life would have gone in a different direction.
And totally different.
Yeah.
There's several points. And it's true for everyone. And there are times when you look back and you think, wow, I should have veered left. What's that yogiism? When you get to the fork in the road, take it.
Take it, yeah.
Or take it. Well, there are times when you look back and said, I wonder what would have happened if I would have been a lawyer. Well, how different would have my life have been versus the life I chose? But I feel good about the life I chose because it allowed me to exercise who and what I want to do on this planet. And so if I go back, I wouldn't change that.
Yeah.
There are things I might change, but I would not change that. I wouldn't change that fork I took.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm a lawyer too. I went to law school at night. I started after a couple of years. I knew I wasn't going to practice law, but I wanted to pass the bar. So I did that. And then I stayed in what I'm doing now. But your family played such a unique role. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. They were, family plays in my life, family, both my parents, my wife and I, my children, and my grandchildren now, they're an anchor. I want to use the word anchor, right? I like to think I love my work, but I escape from it when I'm with them because life becomes different.
Yeah.
Now life is not about people's needs. It's about how are we going to get together and what are we going to do? We love and are loved unconditionally, which is not the state that I see normative in our society. So it's a beautiful thing, right? My wife's supportive. My children and grandchildren, they love me. And it's not because I fill in any blank.
Yeah.
It's just because I'm abuelo, right? To my grandchildren, I'm abuelo. To my two children, I'm pops. They call me pops. My daughter sometimes popsicle for whatever. I have no idea why. And so it's a different from what I consider my mission and my ministry and my calling. I'm also called to be a husband. I'm called to be a father. And I'm called to be a grandfather. But those are like harder, but easier, right? Because there's fun parts to that. There's fun parts to my work and to my ministry, but it's a little different.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. It's like when things go wrong in the ministry or in your work, you approach it and you fight for it, but you don't hurt the same way as when your grandchild falls down and he's bleeding.
Yeah.
It's just weird, but it's the case, right?
Yeah.
And the blood it's not a bad cut, but you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, let me clean this for you again.
Let's get together and let's, I'm still old school. So it's like, hey, you're a ball player, spit on it.
Mm-hmm. I had a situation a couple of days ago where my grandson, as we were walking just out of the blue, he turned to me, he's 9 now. And I love you, Pop, and gave me a hug.
Exactly,
and it
right?
was like a kind of a, wow, this is a highlight of my day today. Yeah. Out of the blue.
And that's anchoring as a human being.
Yeah.
We get anchored and you kind of can project forward and say, okay, this person depends on me. And in a way that's very different because they're totally given, right? We have people we help, but they don't need to be, and nor do they want to be totally given. But when you have a grandchild and they're totally given. When your children are young and they're little and you're tired and you go and you get home and you sit down and you turn on the TV and they jump on you, right? And even though you're tired, you're like, this is cool. And then you create these moments of watching sports or watching a movie or talking about family. And you create these moments that move with you through time, which those moments don't happen with work necessarily or with individuals that you serve. You meet with them for a period of time, but they don't move with you through all of time.
Yeah. You have what you've created in Philadelphia. We talked about it in terms of 25,000 families that you're helping out and the 750 employees. And you've spoken at the White House. You've spoken at the U.S. Capitol building. You've national conventions for the various parties and things like this. You've been a keynoter. How does all that kind of come that you come to Philadelphia? And then also how that builds into this new world that you've been able to create? Talk about some of those moments.
Well, those moments, I sometimes think they just happen. You come to a fork in the road and you decide to be bold. So you go to the left or the right. But that's the bold lane. There's an easier lane. You take the harder lane. When you take the harder lane, let me preface this by saying, this is my opinion, right? It's not a fact. It's an opinion based on my life. So there's a limitation to it. In my life, when I've come to the harder road and I've taken it on behalf of others, it's always turned out to be a great opportunity and a great burden. They go together, and you got to understand they go together. So you may be tired and a friend asks you to do a podcast, you're going to do the podcast. But why? Because it's a great opportunity. It's somewhat of a burden. It isn't, in this case, it's not a heavy burden. I'm talking to you, my friend. But it can be a heavy burden if you're speaking in front of the President of the United States and you know what you're going to say isn't necessarily going to be liked. I'm not baptizing his idea or her idea. Instead, I'm challenging. And yeah, there's an art to challenging power without it being offensive or attack. You can't attack power. You shouldn't, especially if you're invited into their house. And you can't be offensive, but you also should not lie. And so you're there and the topic's immigration. What are you going to say? Mm-hmm. You have to say what's right, regardless of whether you get invited back or not. I served 3 presidents on immigration, actually 4. I always told them what I thought about immigration or other topics, Hispanic affairs, faith-based initiatives. Carter, Clinton, Bush, and Obama. And all 4 of them gave me the space to say what I wanted to say. I was always respectful. And a couple of times I said it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And I got invited back. Even when a couple of times, there's one president that I'll use the theological terminology. There's one president I pissed off. And there was one that looked at me like, you got to be kidding me. You're going to come here and say that. And he moved on. But he just was like, okay, next. But they always invited me back. I found that they respected me more for doing it. And I got to say that's also true for Speaker of the House, both on the Republican and Democrat side. It's also true for most Congress people. Senators who've been in office a long time are probably the hardest. The Kennedys, the McCains, the Schumers, they've been around so long. They don't want to, it's like, come on, Rev.
Yeah. And they run every 6 years. So they've got time in between.
And it's like, come on, Rev. But I also felt proud that they could tell me John McCain was hard. And John McCain would say, come on, Rev, you're kidding me. And with anger. So I was like, okay, yeah. But I would say, Senator, that's how we see it.
Yeah. And I love this part about you, Reverend. You've got the creativity, you see something, you create it. I'm thinking about things like the National Hispanic Prayer Breakfast. I mean, that didn't exist before you were a driving force in creating that. It's an annual thing and it creates a platform and things like that. Talk a little bit about some of the leadership lessons that you've particularly kind of feel inside that have been created through your work with Esperanza and things like this. What advice would you give a young man, a young woman about leadership?
For me, because I'm clergy and because I've chosen that ethical line. I'm going to call it like that. There's different ethical lines you can choose, right? You can be a constitutionalist and interpret the Constitution a certain way. Mine is a clergy position. And my idea is, what will God approve of me? What positions will God approve of me taking? And I use the book of Matthew, where Christ says, what you do for the least of these, you've done for me. So I've taken what's called the preferential option for the poor, that God is on the side of the poor, and the preferential option is for the poor. So whenever I'm taking an action, that should be my first and primary motivation. Those who suffer the most need to be relieved. That is the goal of being a human, right? And that's the goal of serving God. So the ultimate might be Mother Teresa if you want to go there. But if you use that as and I tell young people this, no matter where you go, there's always someone who's worse off. No matter where you go, there's someone who is suffering. No matter where you go, you could be in a neighborhood where the least expensive house is $10 million. Somebody's still suffering there.
Yeah.
And so the goal is find the suffering, take care of it. Help people recover and overcome suffering, whether it's psychological or fear or mental or physical. Those are hindrances to our ability to understand our place in the world and how we can be of blessing to others. So the first thing I do is, when you're speaking to power and you're coming in with that position, understanding of what you're supposed to do, you are immediately in a bad place, in that you have to understand how to raise this in halls of power. Because if not, you're perceived as, he's just a do-gooder, right? And do-gooders can't change the world. You got to be hard about your do-gooding. It sounds weird, right?
And the fact that people are seeing the physical nature of what you've been able to do. So it's not just you're talking about it. When you go through and you visit Esperanza, it's just beautiful.
It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with desire. And then you convince people about your vision. And the platform, you asked me, I guess maybe I could rephrase the question a little bit. It's a platform question, right? So I grew up always being the outsider, right? I was in my neighborhood, but it wasn't my neighborhood. It was the Jewish or Irish neighborhood. Then I moved to the Black neighborhood. Then I moved to college, and college belonged to all these people. And then I went to seminary, and I'm going to call it an Episcopalian upper class neighborhood, right? Because the Union Seminary is Presbyterian, it's Episcopalian, it's the power elite of the traditional denominations, right? So I was never in my neighborhood, where the institution I attended was mine. So when we're given a platform, Latino or Latina or Latin people in the United States are the largest ethnic minority. In the United, we've been for a long time. People forget that. It's like, oh, it's African American. No, it's actually Hispanic. And it's been Hispanic now for almost a decade. But people still don't realize it. In Philadelphia, we're third, right? It's African Americans are the largest group, followed by whites or Anglos, and then followed by Hispanics, who happen to be both Black and white, right? So according to the census, because there's a paranoia about color here. So as Hispanics, we have a history that is not understood by the majority. The first European language spoken in this land that we call America was Spanish. It wasn't English. The guy who landed here was not Italian. If you ever want to piss off an Italian, Brian, tell him that Christopher Columbus was not an Italian citizen. He was a citizen of Spain. This is a fact.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fact, right? But we forget it. And the ship he came on, there were not Spanish names. There were La Dina, La Pinta, y La Santa Maria. Those are three Catholic Spanish names. And that's who landed here. Spain, the first foreign language from Europe on this continent was Spanish, not English. And the first guy who came and destroyed the Indians was not Italian. He was Spanish. His legal name was Cristobal Colón. He changed his name, and he sold his birthright to get funded by the king and queen of Spain. And when he landed here, the flag he planted was not the Italian flag. It was the flag of Spain. The oldest city in America is San Agustin, not
Sweet
St.
name.
Augustine.
Yeah,
It's San Agustin. It's the oldest city in America. It's in Florida.
sure.
The Mexicans did not invade the United States. We had a war, and we took Colorado, which is Spanish for red, because the land is red. We took California and the city of Los Angeles, which is named after a Spanish virgin. I mean, the list is long, but the history is unknown, right? And for Hispanic people, culture in America is created but two ways. Either you have enough finance to create culture, or it's sent from generation. It evolves from generation to generation through institution. So let's do the money one, right? My name is Elon Musk. I used to pick on Bill Gates, but it's 2025. My name is Elon Musk. And one of my researchers comes to me and says, Mr. Musk, we have found a direct correlation between genius for the internet, for AI, and being left-handed jumping. There is a correlation there. We don't understand it, but there is this correlation. Left-footed jumping, left-footed jumping. So Elon can change culture overnight by announcing for every age group, the top 10 jumpers are going to get $1 million. You know he could do this because he did it if you were voting. If you voted the way I want you, I'll put you in a lottery and give you $1 million. And he did. This is even more important to him because this would be corralling AI. So what would he do? Every day after he announces that, everybody, as they're walking out the door, every child, as your daughter or grandchildren are walking out the door, you say, honey, do me a favor. Put down your books. Stand on your left foot. Jump. Just to check. Just in case. Just in case, right? I'm not going to let somebody else get the million if she could get it. Now, what else will you get? You'll get the left-footed jumping Olympics. You'll get Nike, Reebok, and Converse fighting to who makes the left-footed shoe. They'll do a research who are the best players in the NBA and the NFL and Major League Baseball. It'll become an industry. People will teach you how to jump better off your left foot. Why? Because you've changed culture just with the power of finance. Now, there's another way to change culture, and that's why you have Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. Harvard protects the liberal thought. Yale, neoliberal conservatism. Princeton, conservatism. They learn from each other. They develop each other, but that's how they focus. And then you have, I'll use other schools, because this is about culture. Brandeis, Notre Dame, I've used this before. Brandeis, Notre Dame, and Howard. We don't want no Jews? All right, we'll create Brandeis. You don't want no Irish? Fighting Irish at Notre Dame. You don't want no black folk? Howard University. Defended their own culture until they became mainstream culture. Name me the Hispanic institutions that defend Hispanic culture in America, in the United States. I just gave you a Jewish one, neoliberal one, a conservative one, middle of the road one, a black one, and an Irish one. Name one Hispanic one. We don't have them. We always thought we would integrate. The only thing, and inherit, integrate and inherit. The only thing we inherit is what mommy and daddy leave you. So I see it, Hispanic culture made a tactical mistake, which was we did not build our own institutions. But guess what? In America, it's not too late.
Yeah.
This is America.
Uh-huh.
You can raise the money, you can build the institution. So the platform is how to create culture. The prayer breakfast, which is where you started this conversation, is a way to create culture and recognition. Because every president had to come and had to interface with us, whether they liked it or not, because each pastor controls X amount of people. And we are a large group in America, the largest ethnic minority in the United States. Don't come. The other side will.
Yeah, and things like the prayer breakfast where that's going to be, I have to go to that and I'm going to go to it. Then they leave exposed to it and things. Talk a little bit about who are leaders that have really impacted you, because you're a tremendous leader. And when I think about what you've created again from scratch here, who are leaders that you've experienced or read about?
Well, I experienced Dr. Lucius Walker and Dr. Carl Flemister and Dr. Soto Fontanes, who I mentioned, and Dr. Orlando Costas and Dr. Jose Ortiz. You notice what they all have in common?
Mm-hmm.
These are studied Black or African American and Latino men who had devoted their lives in the same path that I followed. So that's one group. And then you have a slew of folks who, through biographies, I'm an avid reader of biographies. I think you learn more from a biography than you do from almost any book. And the more truthful the biographer is, or the autobiography, the more you learn from it. And so I do business biographies, I do political biographies, and they teach you about power and the dynamics of power. So to me, the leaders is what you learn as you go through these is that it's very hard to navigate through all the things that come forward to you. But if you keep pointed in the right direction, the direction you feel you should go, you can navigate. There's wins and losses all the way through, wins and losses. But you navigate toward the place you got to get to. And in my case, my navigation was what Dr. Soto Fontanes told me before I went to Union Seminary. You need to go to Union Seminary because we need you to go to Union Seminary. And we need you to go to Union Seminary because we have not built a solid foundation in the United States, though we were here first. Now, I've learned indigenous people would be offended by that statement, and rightfully so. The hell.
Yeah, we were already here when you got here. Yeah.
When Colon got here, were here thousands of years, right? But that's what I was told. And then through self-enlightenment, through reading and research and things, and through experiences, I've worked with the Hopi indigenous people. I live with them in Arizona on First Mesa with the Passamaquoddy tribe. What I've learned is that we all have our own understanding of history. It's so different, which is why what's going on is a little dangerous because we're trying to homogenize history. The more we homogenize it, the more we disempower individuals and the more we limit people's vision, which is never discussed, right? What makes our country really strong is that everybody has their own history and their own understanding of it. And that leads you to say, I have to fill in, and then you fill in the blank, right? So the Irish came and they suffered all these things. But in their suffering, they were like, we got to fill in the blank. It leads to Notre Dame. And I use Notre Dame as a classic example because it's well known. Yeah. But there are thousands of things that are Irish that people buy, use, have no clue that's Irish, right? And the same for Jewish, and the same for Italian, and Czechoslovakian, and it goes on and on. So the amalgam of all these visions is what makes us a more perfect society, except we cut off some people's development. So Hispanic people have cut themselves. I don't blame this on the other. I blame this on us. We need to develop our own institutions and foster them. We keep trying to inherit, and that doesn't work. It's not. Harvard belongs to all the people who built Harvard. And you know what the proof is that? How many people who graduated from Harvard who have wealth, their kids go to Harvard? 70% of each graduated class. 70% of each incoming class are called, what's that word?
Legacy or whatever.
Legacy, thank you. Yeah. Right? What does that tell you? Harvard belongs to Harvard. That's all. It's not evil. It's their institution. The question is, how do we build many of those institutions? Right? I was just having a conversation. Stanford was created because a country family went to Harvard in the 1800s and said, we would like to build a building with our name on it. And the president of Harvard laughed. So the Stanford family went back home to California. Their son had graduated from Harvard, went back to California, and the wife says to the husband, you know what, honey? Why don't we just build our own Harvard? Institution building? Who knew? Right? And today, Stanford competes with Harvard. Oh, yeah. Notre Dame competes with some of the best schools in the country, as does Brandeis. You got to build what's yours and what you can control. And it should develop into a competitive. And the day it develops into a competitive institution, you've made it. Now you've made it into the next level, which is the competition level to survive. And how was it? Iron on iron?
Yeah.
Well, that's the ultimate. You got to get to that level. Latino people never did. So I saw it as that's what we need to do. We need to build Latino institutions. When you came here, what did you see? Basically, a school with state-of-the-art equipment, right? Art gallery, a theater, all state-of-the-art. Why? So people say, why? And my answer is, why not? The reality is we should have 10 of these in Philly. Philly should have every major neighborhood or piece of geography should have one of these. That's how you assure that the cream rises to the top. If you don't, then the cream doesn't rise to the top because the disadvantages are too huge.
And I would think for the younger people who go in, as well as middle-aged people, a sense of, yeah, we can do this. This is amazing.
All our kids from our high school, every year, our top 4 or 5 kids go to the top schools in the country. Easy. We are competitive with the entire school district. It's like 2 years ago was MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Annapolis. Like our top 5 students go to the best schools in the country, top 6. And we outproduce the other schools in our community. Why is that? I don't know. If I could give you a definitive answer, I'd write the book and sell it. But I can say I know that part of it is that we're drivers.
I was going to say passion. Yeah.
We are drivers. We drive. And then we create an environment that says to them, don't, pardon the way I'm going to say it, don't bullshit us. You got everything you need. So I don't want to hear that my mother never loved you, the old in the 60s. My mother doesn't love me. I'm underprivileged and I live in the ghetto, right? Those don't go anymore. You have first-class facilities. Get to work.
Yeah. Wrapping here, what advice would you give yourself, the young little boy?
You can't do everything. I try. You can't do everything. Persistence and patience will win. Don't close the doors on people. They will surprise you.
Well, Reverend Cortés, these are great things that I'm going to be thinking about myself later today as well, too. I go through life lots of times in life and in business. What if we did win? Let's talk about that for a second, rather than thinking what can happen. And let's be open to it and expose yourself. And I think you have a grit that comes through, which is you're a gentleman, you're a pastor, you're a man of faith, and at the same time, you're tough and you're going to get it done.
It's, that I learned from my dad. Nothing comes without paying a price.
Yeah.
There's a saying, para todo bueno, alguien dejó el pellejo. For everything that's good, somebody left some skin. So you got to have skin in the game, Brian.
Skin in the game.
You know it.
Yes. When we think about our country too, but we're all a nation of immigrants. I mean, that's what makes our country so strong, is that it's diversity of ideas and faiths and religions and passions and things like this coming together.
The only place where I see people really, really open to experimenting is food.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll get a Thai with a Thai food and an Italian person who makes food, and they'll get together and they'll come up with some fusion stuff that's unbelievable. And the flavors and the taste and the look is unbelievable. We need to do that with everything. We've done it with food. We've done it with music. But we haven't done it with everyday life. We're still afraid to do that. But I think as we learn, I'm always an optimist. So my perspective is we will get better at that. We're going through a period of retrenchment and fear of that. But I think we'll get over the fear and we'll become a better country for it.
Reverend Cortés, thank you so much. And thinking about Esperanza coming from the word hope, and we're all leaving this conversation with a renewed sense of hope, seeing the reality of what you've accomplished and reminding us what we can all accomplish as well. So thank you so much, Reverend.
Thank you, Brian. Take care, everybody.
Right. See you.